Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bonolo Medise, and I'm part of the EasyProperties team. I'm sure many of you have seen my face before. Today, we are here to check everything investing in Ballito Groves. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us on this incredible webinar. I'm not alone. I am joined by Andrew, our partners at Narrative. Andrew, hi.
Hi, everyone. My name's Andrew Hartog. As Bonolo said, I form part of the Narrative team and I'm largely responsible for a lot of the property opportunities that you see on the EasyProperties platform. Thanks to Bonolo for hosting. Thanks to all of you guys for making the time this afternoon. And I'm looking forward to talking about Ballito with you guys.
Thanks, Andrew. Nice having you on board. We also have Sandra here to answer other questions. If you have questions, please do send them over to the Q&A section and we'll be able to answer the questions that we don't answer live. So I'm not going to, a lot of time, Andrew. I know this is an exciting IPO. It's the coastal one, and people can invest in it with no minimums, and that means investing into Ballito Groves from as little as $1. So I'm excited about this one, and I know we have over 200 people over here now joining us this afternoon who are also as interested in Ballito Grove and also very excited to know more about it. So just give us a brief overview why this is such a great investment for our investors to put their money to.
Sure. So one of my favorite things about EasyProperties is this community that we've built. It's a hugely engaged community. It's people from all walks of life, and we're very diligent about surveying our user base, and our users have given us the feedback numerous times that they wanted to see a Durban asset. And if you've been following property trends in KZN and in Durban, you'll know that Ballito and the north coast of Durban in particular has been a top performing asset class. So we've been on the lookout for at least the last 6 months for a property asset in KZN. And in our opinion, the Ballito Groves investment that we've put together represents the best in class in that space from a property investment point of view. We've acquired, why I like and why our investment committee likes Ballito Groves is that there's been a huge rush in property prices in Ballito. And while that's been great for people who own property in Ballito already, it does make it very expensive for people who now wish to gain exposure to that market. So what we found in Ballito Groves is the lowest price entry point for new stock in Ballito. So if you look at our prospectus on the EasyProperties website, you'll see that we've acquired 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom units in Ballito, very well located units in Ballito, at an average price of around 1.2 million rand. And that puts it anywhere, depending on what competitive products you look at, it's between at least 400,000 rand cheaper than any other new 2-bedroom unit on offer in Ballito, and often a lot more. And I think that ties into our property investment thesis as well. We want to be in that sector where there's the most demand. It's the most affordable product in Ballito. It's a very high quality product from an experienced developer. So out of that long convoluted answer, I've told you so many things that I like about this asset.
So Andrew, you've chatted a bit about how it wouldn't be easily able to a regular person like me, to invest into a property like Groves because of the area being so expensive and not being easily accessible. Let's chat more about property itself. Right? I mean, how many units are our investors investing into the Ballito Groves?
So EasyProperties as a whole has acquired 17 units at Ballito Groves. The entire development is a little bit more than 200 units. So we represent a fairly good chunk of this whole development. And it's a great, I like where you're going with this question, B, because I think that's one of the major benefits of investing in property via EasyProperties. If you're an individual and you buy 1 unit at Ballito Groves, if you don't have a tenant for 1, 2, 3 months, you're under a lot of financial pressure. But we've got a basket as EasyProperties. We're going to own 17 units altogether. And that just spreads the risk of vacancies in our units across the whole investor portfolio. And I think that's a great attribute for investors.
So this is exciting. We've got 17 units. That's a big chunk, and that's very exciting. So I want to get into the more exciting bit. Is it near the beach? Can people, pop in for like a night stay? What are the lifestyle benefits for the tenants?
Sure. So Ballito Groves, as I said, it's been developed by a very experienced developer. It's the development company, which our investors can look up, is called IHS. And IHS are time-tested and proven in the market for developing accessible but high-value product in the right areas. This, if you look on a map at where Ballito Groves is, if you've been there on holiday, which I'm sure you have, it's in the hub of the high life of the North Coast. So it's very well located. It's in close proximity to schools and shopping malls and all the kind of infrastructure that people need, and the kind of infrastructure that makes the surrounding property valuable. So yeah, I think Ballito Groves represents a very sound investment prospect for EP investors.
Absolutely. So with Ballito Groves being in another province, should investors be worried about management of the units, seeing that this is our first coastal property, it's in another province, most of our properties are in Gauteng. Should we be worried as investors with management and things like tenants?
That's a great question. So it's not the first property that we as EasyProperties have offered outside of Johannesburg. As you'll know, we've done the Rockefeller before, and we've done Black Brick in Cape Town before. So we've definitely got the capability and the expertise to manage property countrywide. Given that this is our first asset in KZN and that we don't have any infrastructure there at present, in this instance, we'll be using best-in-class outsourced property managers to look after these assets for us. So we're going to use the best in class. They're going to be professionals at companies that do this for hundreds of units at a time. So I'm very comfortable that our assets are going to be well looked after.
That's very comforting, and thank you so much for that, Andrew. And I think there's a common question that we always see amongst especially new investors. The first thing they want to know is, what is the return? And a lot of them would refer to the IR, initial rate of return. I see this property is around about the same, has around about the same as our previous two IPOs, the Kikuyu and the Monroe. Let's share a bit about the IRR.
Sure. So just a reminder for everyone on the call at a very high level, with property investment, there are two drivers of your returns, one of which is your rental income, which is income that we collect from tenants and pay over to investors. And the second portion of your return on EasyProperties is going to be the potential to earn capital growth. So that is the increase in value that the property that we've invested in experiences. And that increase in value only comes in at year 5 when we sell these units. So in the case of Ballito Groves, we've got a forecasted rental income of 6.5%. And that's what we collect every month and pay to investors on a quarterly basis. For comparison, you're going to see that that's lower than a Kikuyu, for example. Kikuyu is based in Johannesburg. It's a less expensive product than Ballito Groves. And often rental yields on more expensive products are not as high. But the major benefits of investing in the North Coast and in Ballito, if you look historically, has been that there's been a very strong capital appreciation prospects. So if you take that rental yield of that 6.5%, which we forecasted, and if the Durban property market performs as it has over the last, call it 10 years, then you're looking at an IRR of, depending on what that capital growth number is, an IRR of between 9, 10, 11, 12%. So those two numbers blend to make that IRR.
Thank you for that insight, Andrew. So I know with the Monroe, for example, it was still under construction, and we are expecting for tenants to come in by next year and so forth. With Ballito Groves, are all the 17 units fully, like, do the tenants, do we still need and find people to rent? Can you just chat a bit about it?
Sure. So Ballito Groves is a completed development, and we EasyProperties are purchasing the last remaining 17 units that are available in the complex. As they are completed units and we've concluded the sales transaction, we're in the process of tenanting these units now. So we're actively sourcing these. And if we do have any investors on this call that are looking for really nice accommodation in the Ballito area, you know how to reach us.
Absolutely, sure. You've given us so much in such a short space of time. I think you're more passionate than Andra is with this property or with anyone else with this property. I think let's get into the questions that people are obviously here for. And people have been asking a couple of questions, so I'm just going through them and see which ones we have if we have answered them already. So another common question is there a minimum, which is there's no minimums. You can literally invest with any amount of money that you. And I think you also touched on this as well, Andrew, with the 17 units, how many of them have, I need to read that question again. They are of how many bedrooms? So sure. I think you touched on it as well, that we have between 2-3 bedrooms. Can you maybe just highlight again?
So we've purchased predominantly 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom units in Ballito Groves. Effectively, just to reiterate, the reason that we've done that is that this developer has delivered 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartments in Ballito at substantially less than any competitor has delivered a 2-bedroom unit. So from a comparable point of view, we feel like we've bought the best value product in Ballito at these 2-bedroom units.
Exciting. Patrick wants to know, when should we expect to see the returns after investing in Ballito? Will it be months after the offer closing date on the 13th of October?
Yeah, so he's pointed out well that the offer runs until the 13th of October. We won't close it before that, just because we've got a legal requirement to keep the IPO open for that period. From there, once we've raised the proceeds, those funds go to the conveyancers, and their job is to transfer the properties into the EasyProperties name. So the first date that investors can expect to start receiving their dividend yield, their rental income from these units, is going to be in April next year. And it's quarterly thereafter.
Thanks for that. And then we have another question. So if the return is heavily dependent on rent from if the units are vacant some time, what happens? I think that's another common question that we always get.
So I'll introduce 2 new concepts now, which I should have mentioned earlier. But I see someone saying that they can't hear me. Can you hear me, B?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So in the case of Ballito Groves, because we're not based in KZN, and because we're having to use an appointed property manager for that property, one of the things we negotiated with the seller in this property is a 2-year rental guarantee. And what that means is that our rental is guaranteed for the first 2 years of ownership. And I love those kinds of transactions because it means that during that 2-year period, we have no risk. Investors are at no risk. We know exactly what the rental income is going to be. And it gives us time to familiarize ourselves with the assets and to get better and better at running them.
Mm. I'm not sure, Andrew, if you can an answer about tax here, but we have a question around. So for tax purposes, are the dividends received as dividends or rental income?
So the company, EasyProperties, buys these units into a company, and that is received as rental income. When that company distributes that rental income to investors, it's distributed as a dividend. And what that means is when, in the case of an individual investor, EasyProperties is required to withhold dividends withholdings tax. And EasyProperties does that and pays the net number into the hands of investors. So investors know, an individual investor into EasyProperties knows that the dividend income in their account is an after-tax number. They no longer need to pay any tax on that.
Which is great, especially for a student. I know we have a couple of students here as well. And I think I saw a question from a student, Bitumelo. She says, with less than 5,000 income monthly, how can she start investing in property long term?
Yeah, absolutely. So I didn't hear the number properly. What does the number be?
5,000 monthly.
So I'm going to quote Charles Savage here, who's the CEO of Purple Group. But Charles made a great point when at a recent meeting we had, is that fractionalization makes it possible for anyone at any time of their life to start their investment journey, because there's no minimums. You can literally buy a share for R1 in Ballito Groves, and your property journey will start. Your R1 will earn rental income. If we sell for a premium, you'll earn premium income or capital appreciation on that. So a lack of funds is no longer a good enough reason for not investing in equity, in property, in anything. And that's something I'm terrifically proud of at EasyProperties, and all credit to EasyEquities for everything they've built to make this possible.
Absolutely. I think just start. Literally, we have so many resources on our platform guide you throughout your journey that will show you how to do it, without us giving you advice, but we'll definitely guide you into the process. But as you start, you'll start to gain that confidence, and it will become easier, for you to just carry out that investment journey for yourself. And
Absolutely.
then Dumelo wants to know, are all the property investments valid for 5 years?
So in our prospectuses, so far, all of our properties, we've indicated that we intend to hold for at least 5 years, and that we'll look to sell our investments between 5 and 7 years. And there's a good reason for that, because property investment is definitely a longer term investment. It does take a while for your capital gains to be realized. And remember, with one of the income streams in property being rental income, if you're able to hold that asset for a number of years, it's likely that your rental income escalates each year that you hold. So there's benefits to holding property for longer. And all of the assets on the platform thus far, we intend to be a minimum 5-year hold.
Thank you, Andrew. Lucas wants to know, his other question is that what happens to the investor's shares when the property is bought? What happens to their shares?
So I'm assuming this question is about what happens at the end of year 5, once we've sold the property assets. So we will sell the property assets. Let's say in the case of Ballito Groves, we'll sell our 17 units. We'll distribute the total proceeds to investors. If that includes capital gains, investors will receive their grossed up capital gains number. And the shares that they own in that investment cease to have value. So they receive depending on how the property's performed, they will receive the total proceeds realized on exit, and their shares will no longer have value to them, but they'll have their cash in exchange.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Andrew. Busani wants to know, can one buy shares and also actually buy a unit to let? Earns more.
Absolutely. So there's nothing limiting an investor in EP from also buying other units in the same development. That would just be a third-party transaction that they do with the developer themselves. I believe that something that I don't think we've advertised enough at EasyProperties is that there's huge power in buying property collectively alongside other EasyProperties investors. And in the case of Ballito Groves, it's a great example. We're buying 17 units, and as a result, we're getting I think it's between a 6 and a 7% discount to market prices. So as a collective, we're getting a better entry price than an individual would get. And that's consistent across all of EasyProperties investments. We're harnessing bulk buying, and our investors are getting the benefits of that. That wasn't the question you asked me, but that's what I wanted to say, Fenolo.
You gave us more information, which is something I'm always looking for, and we always appreciate that. So thank you so much for that. Anonymous wants to know what factors would trigger selling in 5 to 7 years, and what happens if an investor wants to hold on to the investment further?
So it's something we haven't encountered yet at EasyProperties because we haven't yet reached a 5-year window. I know our intention, and I've got every faith that we'll deliver this, is that we will we'll offer a digital vote to all of the investors in each property. And at year 5, we'll put that out to a vote, and investors will be able to say, we'll outline the facts, and we'll say these properties are worth this much. We'll be able to achieve this value at exit. Alternatively, we can continue to hold and continue to earn rental income. And it would be a choice, really. Either we would get the votes from investors to sell, or we would decide to keep the assets and perhaps wait for a better price later. So it would be a shareholder vote, effectively.
So, Andrew, it seems like you are the influencer. People want to know, regarding property investing, are there any books that you would recommend, you know, when you're looking to learn as an individual and to educate yourself?
There is one fantastic book that I'll recommend. You didn't prepare me for this question, so I'm speaking off the cuff here. But one of the best property books that I've ever read is a book called Am I Being Too Subtle? By one of the most famous property investors in the world. His name is Sam Zell. And that's that's an excellent read for anyone who's interested in property.
Hashtag, this is not a paid partnership.
Yeah, I did not have a referral link.
So Alan wants to know, when you sell the property after the term, giving investors an option to purchase a unit.
To purchase a unit.
Yes.
So it's not something we've done yet. I think it would probably be quite difficult to do practically, but we would look to sell our units on the open market, and if any investors wish to purchase those units on the open market, we'd be more than happy to make that sale. So yeah, it's not something that we've envisaged currently, but there's no reason we couldn't do that.
I think, Andrew, there's another common question that has been popping up just, you know, a couple of times, not only here, but in the background as well. People want to know, in the event that an investor, you know, dies, what happens to their property investment specifically?
So that's a very good question, Ben. It's not one that I've answered before. I know that the answer would be the same, regardless of whether you're investing on EasyProperties or EasyEquities. That share that they own would form part of their estate. But I wouldn't want to speak out of turn on that. Perhaps we could do like an FAQ and revert on that question. But that comes down to like estate planning effectively. And yeah, I wouldn't want to mislead anyone on that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think we would do an FAQ with that and then update our users. He wants to know, so can she withdraw before the 5-year term?
Yes, so one of the major friction points with property investments, and something that I'm very glad that we've solved with EasyProperties, is that if you're an individual and you buy a piece of property, it's very difficult for you to create liquidity. It's very time consuming. It's very expensive to sell your house that you own. At EasyProperties, we have something called an auction, a quarterly auction. So every 3 months, and that enables you as the investor to, if you need liquidity, to put your shares up for offer, and other buyers will buy those shares from you. So you have liquidity every 3 months on EasyProperties, which is not something you have in the traditional property investment.
So everyone that's on here today is a shareholder in EasyProperties, and I would assume everyone that's here has already invested in Ballito Groves. If not, I hope FOMO has you, because we all have, and it's a great investment to on our portfolios. But I know that we a piece of the pie in Ballito, but there are people that want pretty much a bit more. So Anonymous wants to know, how many shares would one buy or own in order to be a majority shareholder?
Oh, wow. So the total number of shares being issued in Ballito is a little bit more than 14 million shares. Yeah, I don't know how to answer that question, B. That's a difficult one. It's going to be more than R1 million worth to be a majority investor, I would imagine. So
yeah, so I would say, this is not advice again, I'd say just keep on putting your money behind it.
Yeah.
If you like it that much, you can always get more pie when you feel like you've got the appetite to do it. And obviously diversify your portfolio. Okay, cool. And then in terms of dividends, I've also seen this question come up quite often. How do we calculate dividends?
So we have, each of our companies has a separate set of financial statements. Each company owns a different property asset. The rental income is collected. The expenses like the rates and levies relating to the actual units that we own are paid. And the taxes paid and the net number, basically the net income after paying all of the costs of ownership is distributed to investors. That company, there's no cash remaining in that entity after dividends are paid.
And we get this question, thank you so much for that, Andrew. The question that we get quite often is, we've already offered our first KZN IPO. It's a coastal area. It's a very popular holiday area as well. But I think people also, once we've given them, it's an exciting IPO like this one, people also want more. Another question is, are we looking at property outside of South Africa in future?
Absolutely. So I think one of the big things that we've done at EasyProperties is to provide access to an asset class to basically to anyone who wasn't able to access it before. One of the coolest things that I think we could do with the platform now would be to provide South Africans with access to offshore property assets, because that's something that very few South Africans are able to do. It's very complicated, it's very expensive. And when you live in South Africa, but your property is in London or Australia, etc., it's very difficult for you to manage that asset from here. But we've done a lot of work on this now. We're getting to understand all the tax structures and who the right people to buy property from are. And you can bet that within the next definitely within the next 12 months, there's going to be offshore property assets on the EasyProperties platform.
That is very exciting. Is it labor intensive or when looking into commercial property? Because also a couple of questions around commercial property. People are wondering if that's an avenue that we are going to explore in the future.
Definitely. So one of our limitations at the moment with EasyProperties is the check size that we can afford to write. So if you've looked at our track record of listings, our listings have been from as small as, I think, 5 million Rand up to the biggest one that we've bought so far is about 25 million Rand, 23 million Rand. Commercial assets it's a great asset class if you buy the right ones, but they tend to be a much bigger ticket size. So you're talking values north of 50 million Rand. And it's definitely something that's in the horizon for us. But we haven't got there yet because that ticket size is perhaps slightly too big for the investor base where it currently stands.
Cool. Thank you so much for that, Andrew. Got a couple of people joining in now towards the end. Just for your ease of comfort, this recording will be made available after, and it will be available on our YouTube page. Okay, cool. And another question, talking about diversifying portfolios and so forth. Say you slept, right, and you missed out on this opportunity of investing into our first KZN property. What happens when closes and I didn't get the chance to invest into it?
So the best thing to do if you've missed an IPO that you wanted to participate in would be to wait for that IPO's first quarterly auction. So if there hasn't been a lot of people looking to sell so far, but there have been people who've needed liquidity. And in that case, early next year, let's say you missed Ballito Groves and you wish to participate, early next year, some of the people who did get shares in Ballito Groves would be putting those up for sale, and you would have the opportunity to bid for those shares.
And especially with a property like this, I mean, I personally, just looking at the type of property that it is and the area where it's based at, sure, if I buy into this property, chances of me selling it are very slim. So I would urge, or not even urge, but like, if I were you, I would want to get this piece of the pie while it's still open, because once it's, we're not guaranteed if there'll be people who are selling, willing to sell their shares. So I, just take note of that, it's a new property in KZN, so you might not want to miss out on this one. And then
Absolutely.
Question quickly before I let you go, Andrew, it's from Minenhle. She wants to know, how is the maintenance and general upkeep of the property paid for? Is it paid from the rental, or is there insurance to cover that?
It's a very good question. So I spoke about each company buying individual or buying units. That company collects rental income and uses that rental income to pay the various costs of ownership of those units. And those costs of ownership include rates, levies, and, as she's pointed out, maintenance. So she's dead right in her question.
Awesome. And then, is there an opportunity for investors to top up their initial investment once an IPO has closed?
Absolutely. Again, it's just going to be a case of catching that first auction, and ultimately they can bid for more shares at every quarterly auction after the IPO is closed. There's no guarantee that they'll get them. And if we look at how the past auctions have gone, shares have changed hands at auction for a higher price than the initial listing price. So if you're buying more shares afterwards, you might be paying a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about paying more, Muzi wants to know, if one owns shares in a unit and to become a tenant, will he or she get a fringe benefit like paying rent?
So I can definitely see the benefits of renting our units to our investors, and there's a nice synchronicity to that. But ultimately, I think our job as EasyProperties is to maximize returns for all of our investors. So if we can get more, we're always going to be looking to get the maximum rental from tenants, and I would probably have to say no to any form of fringe benefits to investors, because we've got thousands of investors, right? And it's very difficult for us to satisfy all of them. Investors must just know that we're doing our very best to maximize the returns on the property investments.
Absolutely. I think for us who have been with EasyProperties for a while now, we sort of like knows what happens when an IPO is not sold. If if an IPO does not reach the targets, but they also want to know if all shares are not sold in IPO.
Sure. So it's not something, we've been very lucky or very fortunate that and most of our IPOs have been heavily oversubscribed. In the event that an IPO does not reach its target, what happens is that the IPO is cancelled and investors are just refunded their cash. So, and we never ultimately purchased those units that we were raising the cash for.
And another question that I personally had, Kashif also has raised the question, are these units short-term rentals or long-term leases?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's something that investors must look out for when they're choosing between different properties on the EasyProperties platform. We do have certain assets that are predominantly short stay. We've got assets that we run purely as long stay, long-term rentals. And we've got assets that are a bit of both, like the Blood that we did last year. In the case of Ballito Groves, it's intended at the moment that we'd run it as purely long-term rentals. And look, we've got flexibility around that. If it does turn out that there's a very good short stay market, we'll do what we can to maximize return for investors. But in this particular investment is a long stay offering.
And just to go back to the other question that I asked previously, the IPO not reaching a funding target, in the case that, it's oversubscribed, and something that we know, but, for someone who's new and isn't really familiar with EasyProperties, let's just chat a bit about what happens when an IPO is oversubscribed.
Sure. So let's take an example. One of our IPOs was 7 on middle last year, and that reached about 200% oversubscription. What happens in that case is that we allocate shares on a proportionate basis. So if the IPO is 200% oversubscribed and an investor invested 1,000 Rand of their money, they would only be allocated 500 Rands worth of their allocation. So it's effectively a proportionate share. It's not a first come, first serve type of investment. You get your proportionate allocation of the total raise.
Thank you so much for that, Andrew. And last question. I know we have a lot of questions that are through, and unfortunately, I would love to stay and chat some more. But I'm just going to the last question before we end. And this one is from Gerald. He wants to know, is the structure of having a company for each property a cost-effective structure, or is it a regulatory requirement?
It's a fantastic question. And Gerald, we need to have an offline talk about this. But we've had a lot of hoops to jump through at EasyProperties to achieve the structure that we have. At the moment, it's something that we're thinking a lot about in terms of how to make it more efficient. Having a separate company for each investment, it does mean that there's a lot of regulatory hoops that we need to jump through. And in future, there might be more cost-effective ways to do that. I can tell you for sure that at the moment, it's the most cost-effective structure available. But in the future, we're looking to get more sophisticated in that regard. And we're engaging with SIPC, et cetera, to try and find better ways to do that.
Thank you so much, Andrew. I hope you enjoyed to chat offline about this question. We, as mentioned, we are having a lot of questions coming through. Of time, we can't answer all of them in this session, but you can stay tuned. We will be having another webinar soon where you can bring more of your questions, and those are more like platform related. So how to register, how to transfer money, how to make your first investment and so forth. But in the meantime, we also have a help center. Literally down your question or your keyword, and whatever question that you're looking for, the answers are there. Also head over to the EasyEquities YouTube channel. Under the playlist EasyProperties, you will see a lot of our videos where we chat everything from the platform, how to invest, how to start, how to make your first investment, and so forth. But they always available on our website to answer the questions that you might have. Alternatively, tuned on our Instagram and Twitter pages for more information. And we've got a great community of enthusiast property investors. We have a great community of amazing investors that can basically help you along the journey, especially with accessing the resources that are available on our platform. But yeah, Andrew, thank you so much for time to chat to me and our community. I know this is an exciting IPO. I'm very excited, definitely going to be topping up. So if FOMO hasn't hit you after this webinar, then I don't know what you're waiting for. But it from me and you, Andrew, thank you so much. Please stay tuned on our socials for more information, alternatively on our website. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, B. I love these things. And thanks for everyone for joining. It's a really incredible thing to see all of this happening. So thank you.
Cheers. Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.